You're a merchant traveling across medieval Europe, except one night, you get much more than you bargained for. We start things off by meeting Kraft Lawrence, a merchant traveling from village to village peddling goods. He is making his way to the village of Paslo. Along the road, he passes through a monastery, where a knight stationed there inquires about his goods. He explains that he just traded a large quantity of salt to the village of Yorans in exchange for marten fur and winter wheat. Lawrence asks the knight why things are seeming so tense here. The knight explains that there's a pagan festival being held in the village of Paslo to the west and warns him about it. Lawrence, however, is unfazed, as he is familiar with the village and their festivals. Upon entering the village, he is welcomed back with open arms. They talk briefly before Lawrence asks where his former apprentice, Chloe, is, saying that he'd like to share a drink with her for old time's sake. One of the village men explained that he might not get the chance, as her area had the least amount of crops this year, so she might become the hollow of the festival. Lawrence rides up and calls out to Chloe, who is happy he ended up coming to the festival. Other village members then walk up to her, saying that this is the last bundle of wheat, and if they're not careful, Hollow might get away. Just as she cuts the last bundle, Lawrence hears a thump in the back of his cart. Must have been the wind. Chloe, upholding the village tradition, then howls before running away, as the person who cuts the last bundle of wheat for the season is declared the wolf deity Hollow, and now must be caught. Chloe jumps onto Lawrence's cart, saying as it's been a while since they last saw each other, she expects him to take her out tonight. He wonders how that's supposed to happen, as now that she's been declared the Hollow, she must be locked in the temple for an entire week. Later that night, Lawrence begins to make camp in the surrounding fields. He takes the tarp off his cart and he can see the marten fur shifting around. Preparing for it to be an animal, he grabs his knife, then rips the tarp off, revealing instead a naked wolf girl sleeping in his furs. This anime better not awaken anything deep inside me. She explains to him that she is Hollow. He says what a coincidence, that he also knows someone that goes by that name, explaining that the Hollow he knows is a deity that has been revered by the surrounding villagers for generations. Asking her if she is claiming to be the very same Hollow, she tells him that she is considered a god, and has been bound to this land for quite some time, but she isn't God Almighty, or related to Big J. He then asks her that if she really is Hollow, the wise wolf, goddess of the harvest, then prove it. She says bet, eating a bit of wheat, showing him part of her true form, which is too much for him and he falls back out of the cart. As he gets up, there's no sign of Hollow. Thinking he must have just been majorly tripping, he instead stays the night at a nearby inn. As he is going to sleep, he is invited by Chloe for drinks, who has broken out of the temple. She asks about becoming his business partner and about them setting up a shop together, while also hinting that she has some sort of romantic interest in him. He, however, declines altogether, telling her that she is too young to make such a risky move, both in business and in their relationship. After, he makes his way back to the inn, where he thinks to himself he must have imagined it. There's no way Hollow really exists.
誰を探しておるのかや
They chat for a bit, and we learn that due to technological advancements in agriculture, the people of this village are no longer in need of her, and so she wishes to travel with him, to go back to her homeland, Yoitsu, in the distant north. As if he's gonna say no, are you crazy? The next day, as Lawrence rides out of the town, he says the coast is clear and Hollow pokes her head out. She comes out fully and we see her wearing Lawrence's best clothes he spent years collecting. He thinks to himself that her presence better bring him good luck on his business. As they make their way across the country, they are caught up in a storm and take refuge inside a nearby church. Inside one of the rooms, they begin wringing the water out of their drenched clothes. Lawrence asks Hollow what to do about the wheat since it's wet, as she has mentioned to him that her spirit basically lives in it, and her physical form is tied to it. She explains that as long as it's not eaten, burned, or mixed into the soil, it will never rot or wither, so he doesn't really need to do anything. He then comes up with the idea to separate the grains and put them into a pouch for her, to keep them safe. After drying off, they make their way to the Great Hall, where Lawrence explains to one of the noblemen there about his systems of merchanting, a method in which he is able to complete trades without the risk of keeping a large quantity of coin on himself. He simply exchanges goods needed in different areas to make a profit. The noble is impressed and insists that if Lawrence is ever in the Parenzo area, he should come and visit with him. Afterwards, Lawrence is approached by a younger traveling merchant named Zerin, who tells him of a plan he's got to make a lot of profit. You see, they're called NFTs. They're not popular yet, but trust me, the floor is crazy on this. Afterwards, back in their room, Lawrence gives Hollow the leather pouch for her grains of wheat, keeping them extra safe so she doesn't disappear. He then asks her what she thought about Zerin and his plan. Flashing back, we see Zerin telling them that a certain silver coin is going to be reissued by the country with a greater amount of actual silver in it. So if you were to collect a large amount of the current silver pieces and exchange them once the new coins come in, you could potentially make an insanely large profit. In return for this information, Zerin wants a portion of the profit if Lawrence was to follow through with the plan. Back in the room, Hollow reflects that she could sense his story wasn't true, but doesn't know why he would have lied. She then asks Lawrence what he would do if she wasn't there. He replies, saying that he would go along with it. If the story was true, then he would make a large amount of profit. And if the story was a lie, then he could still profit from it by analyzing the situation carefully. The next day, Lawrence agrees to meet with Zeren in the port city of Pazio before discussing any further plans with him, as that is where he plans to sell the marten furs and get some coin. Zeren then departs on foot, with Lawrence and Hollow leaving shortly after. As they're traveling, Hollow asks him if he's ever been attacked in a forest before. He says he has, about 8 times. He recounts one time, where he'd gotten away from the wild dogs, but the wolves were overwhelming. Hollow explains that that's because when a wolf feeds on a human, they become stronger, gaining some of their powers. She goes on, and Lawrence angrily tells her to stop talking about it. And we see a memory of his, running away from a pack of wolves feeding on something or someone. Hollow apologizes, and a silence ensues for a long time. Later, she asks if he's upset, and he says he is, and doesn't want to talk about it anymore. She sadly defends the wolves, saying that they know nothing but the fear of being hunted, and that's why they act that way when people enter their woods. Lawrence, shocked, is about to ask her if she's ever eaten a human.
いくらバッチでもな、答えられんこともある。
Sometime later, they arrive at the port city of Pazio, where Hollow is amazed by all the delicious-looking food around. After entering the city, they pass through a street lined with shops, where Hollow convinces Lawrence to let her buy some apples. He gives her 1 silver piece, telling her she can buy as many as she likes with it. She then goes and buys like 30 apples. You did say as much as she likes. Lawrence is annoyed, telling her she better start earning money for her own meals. He then goes to grab one.
わっちのじゃ!
He tells her that it was his money, but she is confident that she can easily repay him in the future. They then arrive at the Malone Trading Company to sell the marten pelts and inquire about the legitimacy of Zeren's plan. He meets with one of the traders, where he gives a story about the pelts being the finest in the land. The trader gives him a price of 132 pieces of silver for it. He then goes into more detail about how fine they are, negotiating the price up to 140, when Hollow pulls him aside, asking him if that's a good deal. He says it's great, when she then takes over negotiations, using her charm and wolf-like nose to be able to notice the pleasant scent left on them from the apples earlier, tricking the trader into thinking that meant they were the highest quality possible. Amazed, the trader then gives her the price of 210 silver pieces, which she supposes will do. Afterwards, Lawrence is noticeably annoyed, having had his pride as a merchant hurt after Hollow managed to get such a good offer. She reassures him, saying that she didn't come up with the trick herself, she learnt it from watching another merchant in the past. This lightens his mood a little bit. He then mentions that after spending some time talking to people, he didn't find out any evidence of any silver being reissued. That night, they meet Zeren for drinks, where, after being questioned, he reluctantly admits that he cannot guarantee that his information is 100% accurate. Lawrence, however, considers this admission a sign of trustworthiness, and so he agrees to a partnership with Zeren. Later that night, back in their room, Lawrence tries to teach Hollow about the many different kinds of currency that are in circulation. But it's a bit much, and she does the same thing that I do whenever I try to learn anything.
もうよい。もう
The next day, Lawrence takes Hollow to visit Wise, a man who specializes in currency exchange. Wise tells Lawrence that he handles the coin they're talking about every day, and he hasn't noticed the slightest change in them. Hollow then takes a few coins, shaking them near her ears to try and distinguish any sort of difference between them. Later on, after some questioning, Hollow reveals that the newer pieces of silver did sound slightly more dull. Lawrence thinks this must mean the newer pieces have a lower amount of silver content inside them, and wonders if Zeren was lying to him all along. Over dinner, while they are thinking over all this, they arrive at the possibility that Zeren may actually not be working alone in this. Perhaps there is someone higher up who is orchestrating this whole scheme. He leaves in a rush, saying they need to go to the Malone Trading Company. He has a counterplay in mind. A few days pass, and during that time, Lawrence manages to enlist the help of the Malone Trading Company to investigate Zeren. The company has found out that Zeren is spreading misinformation to various merchants on behalf of the Medio Trading Company, one of their competitors, in order to collect a large amount of the devaluing silver coins and gain a lucrative concession from the respective kingdom the coin comes from. For a scheme of such scale to be possible, the Malone Company suspects that a member of nobility must be backing the Medio Company. After bringing this information up to the branch manager of the Malone Trading Company in Pazio, he agrees to work with Lawrence in anticipation of the Medio Company's plan, so that they can take the profits for their own. Later that night, Hollow and Lawrence are chatting, when Hollow mentions that there was something she wanted to tell him, but has forgotten. She then awakens later on, seeing him drawing his imagined storefront. He tells her that if the project with the Malone Company goes as planned, then the company would be looking at near $300,000 to $400,000 of profit made. And even if he gets just a small share of that, it would be enough to set up his dream shop and finally integrate into a town. Hollow sits down on the bed, saying that might be a problem for her, stating that if she wanted to continue her journey after he settles down somewhere, she would either have to do it alone or find another companion. Lawrence says that she's still got her share from the Martin pelts, so she wouldn't have any trouble traveling alone, when she admits to him that she doesn't want to be alone anymore. But she also knows that she doesn't have the right to force him to come along with her on her journey. He tells her that he could still accompany her on her trip north, but after seeing the sad look on her face, he immediately folds, telling her that even if he receives the money, he won't be able to open a store straight away. They then share a tender moment, where she cries into his arms, telling him about the dreams she keeps on having, of waking up and being completely alone, with nobody around. He tells her that he understands. Being a peddler, he also shares these kinds of dreams, before telling her that the deal isn't even finished yet, so there's no point talking about something that might never happen. They become sleepy and Lawrence blows out the candle. After he stumbles back to his bed, he finds Hollow already in it. He then hugs her, going in for the kill when she stops him, telling him that she remembered what she forgot to tell him, that there are 3 men standing outside the door, and she doesn't think they're guests of the inn. That's kind of important information. They suspect that they're from the Medio Trading Company. They then jump out the window just before the masked men break through. After a rough landing, Hollow says they need to run for it. While running to the Malone Trading Company, Hollow gives Lawrence some of the wheat just in case. As they get close, Hollow pushes him aside, as their path forward is blocked by the masked men. Hollow then comes up with the idea of acting as a distraction, which allows Lawrence to escape to the safety of inside the Malone Trading Company. Hollow, however, ends up being captured by the masked men. Lawrence then meets with the branch manager, who, while being sympathetic to his plight, basically tells him he has no contractual obligation or any such financial incentive to assist him, especially as they can now wreck Medio's plan without his further help. Lawrence understandably becomes angry at this, but the branch manager urges for him to calm down, telling him that it makes no sense for the Medio company to go after him specifically, as he has no more value in potential negotiations, then asking him if there's any other reason that they might be after him. Just then, a letter comes through for him, from the Medio company, which, upon opening, informs him that they know Hollow is a wolf deity, and they are preparing to hand her over to the church. Realizing that Hollow's true nature is now in the open, Lawrence tells the branch manager that Hollow is the embodiment of the wolf that presides over the harvests. Elsewhere, Hollow is facing off against her captors, when one of them walks in and up to her. Hollow realizes that she recognizes this person. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It only takes a second and it really helps me out.